Hi again, students. It's me, Mr. Mize. I am not on a remote beach on an island just off the coast of New York State. I'm still in my office, but I'm getting confused of which videos are which depending on the background and what I might appear to look like. So that's why you're getting some variety. It just helps me. If you've seen Inception, the main character, Leonardo DiCaprio's character, Cobb, he has his top that he spins, and if it falls, he knows he's in reality. Well, these scene changes are kind of like my spinning top. But anyway, let's get to the real reason why you're here. I'm going to share a screen today. So this lesson is all about your analysis. We're doing another more formal analysis in Macbeth. This time it's coming from Act 4. And the star of this show is not the entire list of lit devices that I pushed out to you. In fact, the only lit device I want to do analysis on for this lesson is this guy. It's Imagery. And one of the reasons I want to do one of the reasons I just want to focus on Imagery is because there's so much of it, and focusing on Imagery really does force us to go a bit deeper into the text and start asking ourselves questions about why Shakespeare chose this word, and how does this word or this image that these words paint, how does it impact the wider story? That's a more important tool for you moving forward than simply saying, oh, that's a metaphor, yay, metaphor, or hey, that's a simile, or I see what you did there, Billy Shakes, you use personification. It's good to identify them, but it's also good to say why they're there and why they're important, at least to be thinking about it. So I want to go back to Act 3, to this passage, and some of you did your analysis on this passage. So of course, this is Macbeth when he's losing his mind at this feast, his first feast as king with Lady Macbeth. And he's talking to her, and he says, upon my head, they placed a fruitless crown. Actually, no, this is his soliloquy. But he says, upon my head, they placed a fruitless crown and put a barren scepter in my grip, thence to be wrenched with an unlineal hand, no son of mine succeeding. So this is Macbeth venting his frustrations that his power is not secure, right? He has no family line to pass his power down to. It's just him and Lady Macbeth, and that is it. But notice the images that he uses here, this idea of a fruitless crown and a barren scepter. Yes, there is a metaphor there. Fruitless crown. Crowns don't bear fruit. They're usually made of precious gold or metals or such. But if you're comparing a crown to a fruit tree, then yes, you have a metaphor. Woohoo! I found a metaphor, yay! Or a barren scepter. Scepters aren't barren. I'll show you what they look like. Here's some fruitless trees. There's a scepter, right? It's not barren. People are barren, as in if you are unable to give birth, you would be considered to be barren. Or even if you don't want to use the maternal imagery, you can talk about the idea of lifeless. Like, you cannot continue on after this. There's no progeny. There's no lineage. There's no sons and daughters to carry you through. Definitely that's not a problem for the royal family. They just keep making babies left and right. Here's Queen Elizabeth holding just an amazing scepter. Is it barren? No, because she passes down the family, the power struggle, not struggle, the power continues to stay within the family. Of course, people like Meghan and Harry don't want that power, and they pull away from that in their royal duties, but it's still there. There is a specific pecking order of who would receive power. But as we go back to Macbeth, that's not. And he has a right to be worried because no one has his back. He has no Malcolm in his corner like King Duncan does, which you're going to see in the Act 4, Scene 3. But this idea of a fruitless crown or barren scepter, we would consider this to be a type of lifeless imagery, right? You have the metaphor, you have the personification, but these metaphors and this personification is painting this broader picture of something that cannot consistently give life. The idea of death, or the inability to animate, to give life to. And so that's the type of imagery that we're talking about. So just to continue in this vein, again, Identify metaphor, that's important. Identify personification, that's important. But why is Shakespeare, or why is Macbeth, technically why is Shakespeare using this death imagery, this lifelessness imagery? What picture is he painting? How does that connect to the broader story? So here's a definition that I want to use. It's going to remind us where we've been, especially when we've written our reflective narratives, but how we're thinking about imagery now. Imagery is the language that writers use to recreate sensory experiences and stir emotions. It's what helps you see, hear, feel, smell, and taste, rather than just read or listen to words. Shakespeare uses imager. Let's try that again. Shakespeare uses imagery to pack sensory experiences and strong emotions into almost every line. Shakespeare is not writing a novel. Let me repeat that. This is a novel. So this is the cue that when you guys are writing your analysis, you're never going to say, in Shakespeare's book. It's not a book, it's a play that is supposed to be performed. Shakespeare has to use dialogue to achieve that sensory detail. He has to use dialogue, people's actual words that they were speaking out loud, to bring us into the scene, to actually get us to feel, to get us to sense. And normally in narrative, you would have these long descriptions. If you read Charles Dickens' book, the guy that wrote Oliver Twist and the Christmas Carol, he will spend 5 pages describing a stick, which is simultaneously irritating and impressive. The fact that you have that many words to describe a stick just sitting on the ground. But anyways, we don't have that. Shakespeare is not using that form. This is a play, right? So this is a production. This is a presentation. This is a dramatic reenactment, or a dramatic actment. Anyway, you know what I'm saying. So it's different. We're not reading a novel. So we have to rely upon dialogue to do this job of painting these images. So coming back to this slide, so what type of images are being illustrated? We just mentioned one that's about death and lifelessness. Blood is blood we hear today in your act that you're reading, Act 4, Scene 3. It comes up again. Ill-fitting clothes is the one that's interesting, especially as we get into the final act. Babies and children, this is definitely from Acts 4, Scenes 1 and 2, what you just read last time. And even just before that, when Macbeth, of course, is talking, or Macbeth orders the killing of Fleance. But you also have the witches' images that they are putting out that are coming out of the cauldron, where you see these crowned images, and some of them are kids. And some of it is kind of creepy. It's a creepy horror movie involving little children that are creepy. But that's there. That's there. Darkness, light and dark. This is another type of imagery. Animals, this takes us back into Macduff's line about all my chicks. He compares his children to chicks, as in chickens, and he, as the caregiver of these, has failed, and his chicks are gone. They have been taken up in one fell swoop. And then, of course, we see this time and time again, especially with any conversation between Lady Macbeth or Lady Macbeth soliloquying, not a word, but I just made it one. Devils, supernatural, demonic images, curses. This is imagery that shows up again and again and again. So part of your task for today is to find instances. These are just examples. There's other types of imagery in the play, but these are the big ones. To find examples and instances of this, and to hang out on those, and to do your analysis of that. Because the big question is, what does this imagery, where is it pointing us? Where are these images directing? What's the big idea? Why are they here? If I was going to talk about blood, I'd talk about the price that there is to pay when you shed innocent blood, and that no matter how hard you wash your hands, that stain is still going to be on you. It's imprinted on you. You've crossed that line. If we talk about the importance of animal imagery, oftentimes it has to do with parenting, that we see in how Macduff speaks about his kids. This idea of tending to your flock, tending to your lambs, taking care of those that you are in charge of, that you're responsible for. So there's a lot going on, and Shakespeare loads this play up with all this different type of imagery. I'm just asking you to identify one example. If you do more than great, but I just want to stay focused on imagery. So bringing you back to the screen, just about to end this lesson. So in your handout that you have access to that's linked, the original one asked you to identify the lit device that you were focusing on, whether it's symbolism, imagery, metaphor, whatever. define that. I don't need you to do that. The reason I don't need you to identify the lit device and the definition of lit device for this round is we're all focusing on imagery. That's the only one. So you don't need to spend your time telling me, oh, this is imagery. I want to know what type of imagery it is. That's the part that you need to identify. I want to know what passage you're actually going to be using, actually get that passage on the page, whether it's a couple of lines or whether it's 10 lines. And then the big question is, how does that imagery fit into the bigger story? Why is it important? Why is Shakespeare putting it there? And then at the end of this, I'm going to have you guys upload it, turn it in. So let me go to the actual document itself so you can see it. Did I not pull it up? Let me see. Let me grab it for you. And this is what's linked already. Here we go. All right. So I copied and pasted some of this onto the lesson that I just showed you. But essentially here it is. Again, you do not need to identify the literary device. We already know it's imagery, but my question is, what type of imagery are we talking about? The internet is great. It's cool. Just as a reminder for us guys on this assignment, watch me, I'll do something that you'll appreciate or not really quick. I'm gonna go to sparknotes.com. I'm gonna type in Macbeth. And Macbeth key questions, key question answers. No, I don't want that. Let's do this. Shakespeare. And let's go to Macbeth. Notice all of these resources. You got themes. This actually will be helpful for you as you are looking at showing the themes that come up from these from the imagery that you're focused on. So again, these are great resources, guys. I want to make sure you know that they're there, but just be careful not to lean on them so much that you forget whose legs you're standing on as you're doing your assignment. Is it the internet's legs or are they your own? So anyway, that's all for now, guys. I hope that's helpful for you. So long, and I hope to talk more soon. Shoot over any questions that you might have. I'll do my best to answer them as quickly as I can. Otherwise, I'll say bye for now.